What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another week's episode of Three Simple Men Making Their Way Through the Galaxy. I'm Tom, with me is Ryan and Mike, and today we are in the Clone Wars Season 1, Episode 1, titled Ambush. Fellas, what do we think about the episode?
Great episode.
Yep.
Loved it. I mean, we get to see one of our OG favorite Star Wars characters just full-fledged action, having a good time. We'll get into it. I want to just kind of set the tone here and just kind of center us to where we are in our opening kind of recap monologue that we get in the beginning. We're pretty much dealing with where we've been in the past few episodes. Neutral planets. They talk about that and how it's kind of getting to a point where you really can't be neutral. You got to pick a side. And it's our planet from last week's episode, right? Yeah. Our planet from last week's episode. We're back on Toydaria. And at this point, we know that Yoda's on his way to meet with the Toydarians to discuss some form of treaty or alliance. I'll start us off with the quote that the episode starts off with. Great leaders inspire greatness in others. And with that, go ahead.
I think right off the bat, I think we got to start off with, for some reason, every time the Republic needs to do something that helps them in favor there, the Separatists are already there, like preemptively, like trying to block the Republic out, like trying to just prevent them from getting to Toydaria, try to get them, because like you said, Ryan, the neutral systems, all these planets are now being affected, and now it's becoming one, you join one side or the other, and really Count Dooku and the Separatists are trying to push for Toydaria.
Well,
Yeah, you can.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Just tell right off the bat that, like, at the beginning, the King of Toydaria is like, "Oh, look, the Republic's late," and who shows up conveniently? Ventress and the Separatists with Count Dooku via hologram, and they're like, "Oh yeah, hey, we're here, and this is what we can offer you with Separatist protection. And our spies informed us that you'll be meeting with the Republic, so of course they got the jump on it." And then when you see the Republic jumping in, like, "Oh, our comms are jammed, and we get ambushed by 2 Separatist cruisers." So
Yeah, so kind of to touch on that, we do get that, as you said it, Mike, the line, like, I believe King Katunka says, your spies have, done well by you, Dooku, and informed you. And I'm trying to think, I want to say it's one of our earlier episodes, right? Where it was the only other episode where we really kind of had the spies, right? We had the turned clone who had turned on the rest of his men.
Yeah, the Battle of Solstice.
Yeah, but we don't really have we hear about the spies, but we haven't really gotten into any true, besides that, like espionage or kind of like spy storyline. So it'd be interesting to see if that happens or when that happens. But clearly, it's a full war, so all the different tactics are being used, and spies get referenced periodically. So we'll see how that turns out, and if we get a deeper look into that. But you mentioned some names too, Mike. We get Dooku, of course, again via hologram, which has pretty much been the majority of how we've seen him over the past few episodes, is just hologram, right? And then we get Ventress again. And then of course Yoda. I do want to point out, I feel like this is the first time that the Empire really just seen, or sorry, not the Empire, ooh, getting way ahead of ourselves. The Separatists seem dumb, right? Like, I feel like Ventress thinking that she can take on Yoda, or Dooku thinking that Ventress could take on Yoda, or that the droid, it was like naive. And this, I think, was our first true failure, right? I've talked about it and pointed out many times that, like, the Separatists fail, but then we always get kind of a little powwow at the end between usually Dooku and Palpatine, where it's like, oh, we failed all according to plan. But this seemed like the first time that that they were actually delivered a major loss. They lost. The goal was to get this planet, and I'm jumping ahead, but they lose the planet, right? And it just seemed really tactically, it just seemed dumb. And maybe this is because this is now earlier and this is in the first season of the Clone Wars, so maybe the writing is a little, it didn't find its footing, right?
I
This
mean,
is the first episode of the Clone Wars, actually.
yeah, but I was gonna say, I think with Ventress, it's arrogance because she believes she can win, not realizing that Yoda has been around as a Jedi for hundreds of years, who's mastered lightsaber forms, mastered the Force, and beyond that, another theme that we're going to dive into is how wise he is.
Yeah,
He was also, very creative and like, because like with the personnel on board the cruiser, they're like, oh, we gotta get you to safety, we gotta get out of here, and that's probably what Ventress was thinking. That with the ambush, they're either gonna get destroyed or they would have to flee the system, and then that would make it go in their favor. But yeah, to your guy's point, she really underestimated the wisdom, experience of Yoda. Where he's like, well, let's just shoot off all escape pods. And so if they do shoot some, hopefully it won't be us. So
He uses the Force as an ally.
I was gonna say, it seemed like there was a little forced meditation going on in that pod, in that escape pod. Like he's just sitting there, eyes closed, kind of quiet, while all the other pods are getting blown out of the sky. So I felt like he kind of manipulated that situation with the Force a little bit. Would be my thought process. I don't know if you guys thought the same thing or if it was just luck, but I don't.
I mean, one of the things that like this is probably like a Knights of the Old Republic reference. There's like this battle meditation ability that
That's kind of that's what I was just
like
referencing. Yeah,
like operate at peak efficiency even with like the low numbers that they had, and I feel like also too it's just Yoda's just creative with things because I mean who knows how many battles he's been at this point, but just like seeing him in action, just like yeah, let's just shoot all of them. But yeah, there could be an argument made that he might have used the Force in a little bit to sway it.
and to go back on Mike, you talking about how wise Yoda is in this episode. Yeah, I tried to write as, I'm always trying to find like the quote of the episode. I read the first one, but it's just every line from Yoda in this episode is just a quotable. Like you could have it hanging as a poster in your like office or something. And I wrote some of them down, but it was just everything he said was just a lesson in the fun Yoda speak language with the mixed up words. But I guess we'll go just to center us again chronologically. Basically, Ventress challenges Yoda to, hey, if he can survive, let's put him to the test. The king says, absolutely not. That's not why I invited him here. But Yoda says, challenge accepted. And mission begins where him and 3 clones, Riz, Jack, RYS, Jack, and Thyre, yeah. So it's just him and 3 clones, and their mission is basically to get to the king. It's kind of a King of the Hill, right? Or capture the flag almost. And they end up getting an entire battalion, or at least they say it's an entire battalion. I don't think I would want to say an entire battalion's like 700 and something units, but this was a fair amount. We do get the line, a single Jedi equals 100 battle droids, was what the king was always told. And then, the mission begins. So you guys want to talk about the race to, I'll hit the other quote too I wrote down. To reach our goal, a straight path we will not follow, Yoda. So what do we think about the
I mean, that's very, like we said, he's wise because his exact line was, that's our destination, but our enemy knows that's our destination. So pretty much strategy wise, we're not going to go straight forward. We're just going to take our own path.
And it's funny because I was like, they mentioned 2 traps. Like you would think like the first trap was getting ambushed in space, and it's like, and he's like, oh, I sense this in the Force that we're walking into another trap as well. So, you definitely picked that up. And then just another quote that I thought was pretty funny at the beginning was with the battle droids when they're trying to shoot it down. It's like, oh, it's a terrible shot, or like you're a terrible shot. It's my programming. I'm just like, hey, that's a reference to stormtroopers.
That was a good chuckle. And I want to go back to what you just said too. The traps. Again, it's a reoccurring theme that I will bring up every single time. Jedi just knowingly walk into traps, right? They know they're traps and they go, well, and even so, I think the trap has been sprung or whatever, it's like that's all they do. That is the Jedi's MO, is know that have the Force, know that there's a trap, where you would think like, okay, I know there's a trap, I'm gonna go somewhere else. Instead, it's just, oh no, we know there's a trap, but because we know it, that's the advantage, and then they spring the trap every time so far.
And I think I don't know if I'm gonna be stealing a quote from you, Ryan, but at one point
You're good.
Yoda was like, "Oh, we may be smaller in numbers, but we have a larger mind than they do." And
Yeah, I did write that one down, but that's
just
it's fine. There's so
emphasizing,
many quotes in this. It's such a quotable episode.
yeah, I mean, just like going organics against droids, where you have that ingenuity, creativity versus programming. Yeah, it definitely Yoda feels very confident in his group's abilities, even with the odds against them. So, yeah, you did definitely see a different dynamic between Yoda courting a small group versus Ventress over her battalion of battle droids, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, just throw
Yeah,
everything at them and hope something sticks, and it doesn't.
yeah, and going back to that programming and an ingenuity between the clones and the droids, this is why I think Dooku said, because they're all programming and it's easier to make. That's why they outbeat them 100-1 with the clone troopers. But when we see in this episode is you might outnumber them 100-1, but you're using standard droids who are based off programming, and they're not adapting to how they handle the situation like the clones do.
I think, Tom, I want you to go further with that, and let's just hop right into the little cave scene we get, where Yoda has the moment with the three clones. You want to kind of go into that a little bit more, because
Yeah, I mean,
what you're basically talking about.
It's pretty much like a surreal moment. It's not just Yoda being a general, but he's also a because of his wisdom, he's showing compassion to his the troops, but also giving them a sense of, you're not just clones, you're not just soldiers. You may look alike, but each of one of you is got their own individuality, your own personality, and it makes you different, and it makes you unique, and it's something you really build your skills around.
Yeah, absolutely. They each one of them brings, and he says it, they each basically bring something different to the table. The way they think, the way they operate, and that's not the case with the droid. I mean, the entire battle we see 3 different types of droids, arguably. I mean, maybe 2 of the battle droids had different like paintings on them, but realistically, we had your standard battle droids, your what are they, heavy armor droids,
E2 battle droids, or
and then we had the the destroyer droids, right? Or the
term, by the way, rollies.
yeah. And we did get clankers used a couple times too, which I always love.
Clankers, and then they also call Republic dogs too. So you definitely have a little bit of banter between both sides.
Yep, which is always fun. Reminds me of the old Call of Duty games where your characters are yelling back and forth at each other. But no, I mean it's again it's another theme that we will see constantly throughout this series, is just clone versus droid is the battle, but then also the discussion is, are the clones more than just clones? I mean, obviously they're clones. We don't. Yeah, it's funny to have this conversation because we don't have clones in today's society yet, at least realistically. But it's like, what are the rights of clones? What are what are they people, or are they expendable? And I think we're gonna get some quotes about that later too. It and that's something we're constantly going to see, and we can clearly see that Yoda with the Force, and he says, I believe it's something, I didn't write it down, I should have, but something along the lines of, your faces might all look the same, but within the Force you all look very different, and it's kind of cool, and to kind of have that, which we don't get a lot of, but Yoda's like the deep in kind of use of the Force, and kind of a discussion of how he sees things within the Force. And we also get his kind of connection to the planet. Another quote I didn't write down, but early on he says, what a beautiful planet, and something along the lines of like, how amazing this universe. And then of course, after the whole battle, we have him sitting on a rock in his meditative state again, and some weird like fish, salamander, birdie looking things come and fly by him, and it's just a very like, he's clearly at one. He's very like, in touch or at one with the Force, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Also, let's talk about the planet for a little bit. You notice I the whole time I was watching this, I was kind of like, man, I'd really like to see this planet in live action. I think it'd be kind of cool. It's almost like a underwater planet that's not
I was about
underwater.
to say it's giving me SpongeBob vibes.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of like coral almost, and it seemed like it was a planet that was probably once a complete ocean and then dried up.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't Toydaria because I think it was a neutral planet where they were going to meet. So yeah, it's definitely different
They said
from.
it was a moon, I
Yeah, it
think.
was
I
a
think it
moon.
was
I
the
think.
Yeah,
was it the moon of Toydaria, maybe?
I believe so. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's a different kind of atmosphere, and yeah, I mean, Yoda was connected to the planet, connected with life. I think we see like different Jedi with different levels of connection to like the living force and some of those different aspects that we see with like Qui-Gon and some of the other members of the council. Um, but yeah, and even when Yoda was talking about it, the clones were like, what is he talking about? Like it was a hard time for them to understand. But like when they were in that cave and Yoda explained himself and how each of them were unique, that's when they really just they got that like morale boost that, and they were pretty confident that they could take it on regardless of whatever they threw at them, whether it's battle droids, supers, rollies, tanks.
I'm gonna throw it back to the original quote. I feel like this might be the first time the original quote was super relevant. Great leaders inspire greatness in others, and it shows. Yoda's a great leader. They're concerned because they're a small group. He tells them, no, no, no. You know, as you said, Mike, or Tom, one of you, sorry, small in number but large in mind. He throws that out there. There, you know, at one point, I want to say, maybe Thayer, right? He was the lieutenant and he was injured, and he's like, I only got one rocket left. And they're like, oh, don't, and he's like, don't worry, you'll know the right time. And sure enough, that one rocket took out all the
Rollies.
rollies.
I guess I'll
But
just talk about the battle too, because like
yeah, let's do. Oh yeah, we didn't even dive into that. Go ahead, Mike.
yes, I mean first you have like Yoda's like, yeah, I'll meet him head on, and you guys will know when you're needed. So it's just like, oh, it's like, and then they check in with Ventress, like, oh, we found Yoda. It's like, oh, where is he? He's like, he's right in front of us, and I'm like, oh crap, shoot him. And it's like, and like then you just see
Shoot him
Yoda
now.
going off with just jump, igniting the lightsaber, going in, like getting very creative with whether it's just slashing up droids or just going under the tank and going in and shooting people out of the cockpit. And that was pretty funny too. And some of the battle droid interactions, like I just got promoted
I
as
was
he
about
was
to say
dying.
that. Yes, that was probably the funniest one.
And then I think there was like a one moment when they're trying to run out of the back door and you just see them running an errand and they just get pulled in, sliced and pushed out again, which was pretty funny. So you see Yoda just wrecking up the entire group, and then you see the droidicas, and then that's when the clones realize, oh hey, this is our one shot to before they ambush him, and they perfectly executed. Everyone, all the droids were destroyed. All is good. And Ryan, to your point, you have Yoda just sitting on the rock with and just petting the birds, and then they're on their way to the king. And at that point, the king goes like, "Yeah, you're wrong, Dooku. I mean, Jedi's not worth 100, more like 1,000 battle droids. Like after what I saw him join the Republic, you broke your word, didn't give him a fair fight, and then Dooku wasn't pleased. Like, yeah, I'm going to kill you on the spot right now, and we'll appoint your successor, who will join the Separatists. And then, as Venture's ready to hit the killing blow, then you see Yoda right there using the Force to hold back both blades.
Well,
So,
let's talk. I want to jump back a little bit into that battle. Do we have a signature Yoda move here that appears? One he kind of he does a little backpacking where he keeps popping on everyone's back, which is which is something we'll see him do later, but in a training
yeah,
version. But I also noticed,
One.
I don't know if it has a name, and it kind of reminded me of something one of that we'll see Ahsoka doing at later dates. But the way he kept using his lightsaber to cut a circle in the tank, but then he would use the force to kind of pop it. Almost, I don't know if it has a name. I'd call it the can opener because that kind of seemed like what he was doing. He'd just go like real quick, and then he'd just pop it out with the force and kind of throw it. And he did it twice, and I was kind of like, that's a pretty cool move.
I mean, probably just like a pull or something, pull and push.
Yeah, but I mean the combination of like as a way to
I mean,
get into
yeah,
the tanks.
telekinesis, you definitely.
Yeah, little Yoda's you know,
I think I saw him do something with his lightsaber with a twirl that we'll see later on in the next movie that we'll watch in a specific scene. Yeah,
But
it's
just the whole jumping around and slashing, that seems to be a signature thing, just given his short stature and just, if he wasn't doing all that jumping around and agility, because I think that form of lightsaber is definitely for Yoda. Some of the others just think that the whole lightsaber thing is probably his signature thing.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. We had him bouncing around the rocks or the coral, which we saw earlier when he fought Dooku in Attack of the Clones, right? He was like kind of jumping around the outside, and we'll actually see Ventress. Well, we can get into that. So, Yoda just totally, which a move we really haven't seen yet, right? Have we seen a Jedi just fully stop another Force user from even moving? Just hold them completely still? Or anybody in that case? I don't think up until this point we've had any Jedi just completely stop somebody.
I don't think we see.
Well, I know we will see it again, but I think it's just to speak to how powerful Yoda is. He just stops Ventress completely in her tracks, which was awesome. And yeah, I mean, it's not right. Qui-Gon, nobody's done that yet.
I think this is the second time we also see a Force being used to pull the lightsaber as well
out of her hand. Yeah, he not only does he freeze her basically in completely freeze her standing still, he disarms her, and then he hits her with the strong you are with the dark side, young one, but not strong enough. Oh no, sorry, but not that strong. So he throws a little shade at her too. But it shows how powerful he is. I mean, if he could just stop, and again, spoilers, but we will see other Jedi or other Force users in the future that can do, are that powerful in the Force where they can just freeze somebody completely, where they can't move at all. We'll see it. It happens. What would that be called? Stasis, maybe? Isn't that the move from all Knights of the Old Republic? If we're using that as our go-to name for the Force moves. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this and you have the ability to play Knights of the Old Republic, you should absolutely play Knights of the Old Republic. It's 100% one of the best video games of all time. And that could be my hot take. You can yell at me in the comments if you disagree, but it is a fantastic game. So did anyone else notice how Ventress gets out of this situation?
I was about to say she uses a detonator, brings down the rocks, and then it leaves Yoda in the same situation that we've seen before, where he has to hold the rocks with the Force while she escapes. And we had seen that with none other than Dooku himself, with Anakin and Obi-Wan.
In Attack of the Clones. Good catch, Tom. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I was like, it's their only move. That's their only move of escape is, all right, well, we're going to, which is funny too, because it's like, well, wouldn't that be maybe a good time to attack instead of escape? Right? If you're going to have him occupied with that, maybe come on up there and throw a little lightsaber action in there and try to, but instead they always use it to run.
They blew up the Toydarian ship in the process too, because I think it was right above them, and so they had the ship and the rocks that were.
But down. as Mike mentioned earlier, with that, King Katonka swears allegiance to Yoda and the Jedi and the Republic, and will let them build a base on their planet. And again, touching back, that's it. That's the end of this episode. We don't get any big grand failure was necessary. It looks like it's an actual, if we had a scoreboard going, the Separatists are 10-1, and I think this is their first loss.
So much for a perfect season.
Yeah. With that, you fellas have any hot takes or deep dives?
Hot take. Once Yoda disarmed Ventress, one of the clones should have just pulled out a pistol and just tried to shoot her. Would have ended, really would have shaped the war entirely.
Is it weird that he gave her her lightsabers back.
Very
know,
quickly too.
He
Yeah.
like takes them, says you should surrender, and like gives her the lightsabers back. Like, I would have kept those. I would have had the clones maybe arrest her.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. Like, why are you giving those back to her? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a negotiation with a neutral party. So I mean, yeah, you intensify the war
they
depending
tried
on
to
whatever,
assassinate the neutral party.
yeah,
I think
however
that
you
kind
want to
of I think that
however
breaks
you want to look at it. But I think and just Yoda's like, yeah, yeah, just maybe the young one wasn't worth his time, or maybe not worth the clone's time to like capture her, kill her, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you see the king offering his sword as proof of allegiance to the Republic, and see Yoda holding on to that, and then the Republic comes in and saves him. But one other thing I'll point out too, like one point in the first round of the battle that we didn't really talk about, you see at one point Yoda just left in the Force and using the super battle droid to take out all the other ones too, and like I'm functioning, and like someone's hey save me, and they end up shooting him in the process. But yeah, you definitely see a lot of. I mean, it's definitely you got that mix of battle too, but you really just see like that compassionate side of how the Jedi view how Yoda views like the planet, the troopers, and everything within the living force. So you definitely see a lot of perspective on this episode. No deep dives worth dying for like last week.
Okay. And I think with this episode and the episode beforehand, we're early Clone Wars. The series is trying to find its footing, trying to decide where it's going, what it's doing. Definitely trying to appeal to children too, right? It is an animated series that originally aired on was it originally Disney or was it originally
I think it was
Cartoon,
Cartoon Network.
Cartoon
cartoon,
Network?
yeah,
Yeah, so you can see they throw in like a lot of that like kind of goofy comedy, right? And I think anytime the droids talked, it was like we didn't mention either, but Ventress is like, "What's going on?" And then the one battle droid comes on, and he's like, "Oh, so and so's been destroyed
two
by
two
the
four,
jet." And
yeah.
as he's saying it, Yoda is climbing on him and cutting off his head. It's a lot of like chuckles, a lot of I could see being like very entertaining to kids and adults. I mean, it
I
was
think
fun.
you know what, Mike, you might kill me. I think about a deep dive. This might be true. I think it's because these droids are getting personalities now. It's
Yeah.
because they're going to be charged, like they're going to be controlled individually, like battery packs are in the back or something like that. I think the separatists realize you can't control them through a Trade Federation starship, where if it gets blown out, your entire army gets destroyed.
Makes
Yeah, they
sense.
definitely learned their lesson from episode one, and yeah, I mean they could operate independently without it, but yeah, we do see some personality and with the way they poke fun at one another, like, oh yeah, you're a terrible shot. It's my programming. So definitely a lot to look into from the separatist standpoint with this utter failure, but see what happens.
All right. With that, Mike.
That's a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining Three Simple Men, making their way through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, subscribe, and come back next week as we explore some more Clone Wars Season 1 content. May the Force be with you, always.